Morning sickness continues with Frosty, Heidi, and Frank.
On the rock of Southern California. Rock 95.5 KLOS.
Frosty, Heidi, and Frank show. Behind the scenes, Kerry Keegan and Frosty are talking about his hair.
Stop it.
Shave it.
Whether you should shave it or keep it the way it is.
Well, I mean,
Everybody says shave it, dude.
I know.
I've seen the Facebook post.
I know, and she just filmed me, and I look like a big, huge, fuzzy Humpty Dumpty. I've got this big, fat, blobous, bald, shiny, bloated, pale, pasty head.
Yeah, so cut it all off, man.
But I look even worse without hair. I'll look like a giant
You've never
moon.
gone
Not when you
completely
get all
bald.
svelte and skinny.
Really? You prefer me completely bald over the little bit of hair on the side? A little bit?
I think most girls will probably agree that if you're just trying to chase that hair dragon, just get rid of it. Like it's because you look like you're trying now.
Because I got plenty on the sides. I could comb over from this side to this.
Oh, the comb over. How you like that, girls?
Oh yeah, Trump is the sexiest thing I've ever seen.
Things
No, but
never
I mean,
said for
no-
200, Alex.
Nobody there's a certain amount of time that you have to do the hiding part.
Right,
And
that's-
then you just have to own it. And confidence is actually way sexier than hair.
So you wouldn't find me less masculine or sexy without any hair at all. Like I
I
still
would
have some.
find you more sexy
It'd be
because
more sexy. You're not sexy at all right
owning
now.
it.
Oh. But like Sting and those guys, they still have hair, but they spike up what they have left.
No, he doesn't.
I could use product.
Sting has.
You can't use
he's
product,
barely
dude.
got
There's
hair.
nothing.
I
There's
could put
nothing
some
there.
Moose. There's like 10 to 12 hairs in here. I can moose these up.
Oh
No.
God, you touching him makes it gross.
right.
Can I touch him?
Please. Oh, she
Yeah,
touched
what's
me.
it like to touch
Notice
It's like
crazy? Is it like
Yeah. Notice the texture of my dying hair. They feel different from normal hair, don't they?
Yeah, they're coarse.
Are
They're
you
wiry.
trying pube transplants?
Yes.
How old are my hands
In
right
fact,
now?
Mm.
they can do that. I've checked into that.
Pube transplants?
They can take from your armpits, your pubes, your back hair, whatever you want.
Why
they can
would
do
you
that.
want pubes on the top of your head?
Well, I don't want it's my first choice, but
But if you
see,
put
that
my
it is.
pubes on the top of your head,
Hey, now you know
there
what?
you
Now we
go.
talk after the show.
There you go.
they're all like they stick out like this.
If you
they?
really want to be a brunette,
Finally.
you know it's true.
This is real. This is the
That's
real
all
one.
real deal. Prove it.
Not this
All
part. That part.
Said Morgan Freeman. Prove it. All right, Myles Berman, he's waiting in the hallway. It's a big weekend coming up, Memorial Day weekend. A lot of people traveling on the roads, a lot of people going to parties, and a lot of people drinking. But there's no reason to drink and drive.
Within this day and age of Uber and Lyft and cabs, for God's sakes, there's no reason to be stupid and drive while you're driving.
But if you happen to make a mistake, or if you want to know what's the deal with DUIs, Myles is coming on. So I want you to give us a call right now if you have any questions. 1-800-955 KLOS is the number. Let's get Myles in here.
Myles Elberman!
The Top Gun DUI defense attorney. Here he is once again. It's Kerry Keegan. She's filling in for Heidi.
You probably remember me, but I barely remembered you. Last time I saw you, I was wasted.
Yep.
Sorry about that.
It
And me.
happens.
Myles, I
That
know.
one needed a
Frank.
lawyer. I was all right.
Myles, I don't remember the last half
You
of
were
the show.
you were okay.
Was I?
And I'm impressed that you have some memory of me.
Yeah, compared to
I remember
Frosty.
you sitting right here, but it's funny that they put us so far away now. I feel like maybe I offended you last
You're
time.
right. I was sitting there. No, you didn't offend me at all. You were great.
Thank you.
Do you remember what part of the show you made the appearance last time we did the alcohol?
Yeah, it was like one of the last
Yeah,
segments.
after you started drinking.
Because I don't remember you. I don't remember you at all from that show. I don't remember you. I think we got to work next week. Did Myles come in? They're like, yeah.
Yeah, you saw
I'm not
Myles.
surprised you don't remember, Frosty.
Sorry.
Yeah, Frosty doesn't remember peeing his pants.
Just would you
having
stop
help in the
saying-
hallway, pulling his
Stop
pants up.
saying
It was
that.
awful.
It's the booze.
But yeah, if you have any questions, 1-800-955-5567 is our number. You can call up because we have Myles L. Berman, Top Gun DUI defense attorney, in the studio, and you may have questions. Maybe you have been pulled over. Maybe you're currently working on something right now. But this is a big drinking weekend, and so there's probably going to be a lot more of the what are they called? The
Checkpoints.
checkpoints.
Well, what was that arm
What were
moving?
you-
Well, obviously,
I know.
the charade. Me and Miles are great charades players together.
But how is this?
I don't even
retarded
know.
seal
That's the
anything-
indicator.
We're going to play
Say that.
Pictionary later. All right, so checkpoints. A lot of them out this weekend?
Yes, there are. And it's not just alcohol, drugs and marijuana. So, especially with what's going on in the cannabis industry, that marijuana cases are becoming more prevalent.
Is the charge the same? Is it this? Is the what you're charged with the exact same? Smoking a couple joints as it would be for a couple beers?
Yes and no. How's that for a lawyer answer? And that's the truth.
How unusual.
No, I don't think so. I think it's still under the influence. I mean, obviously, the measurement's going to be different. We say
That's the issue. Yes, it's, you're impaired. You could be impaired by alcohol or drugs or marijuana. But with alcohol, there's also a level of 0.08. But with marijuana, there isn't a statutory amount of nanograms in your system that would make you impaired. It's kind of subjective.
Yeah, last time we talked, there wasn't
Right.
a definitive mark of, okay, you're impaired. And because marijuana stays in your system for 30 days, how close are they getting to an actual number to say if you're pulled over and you blow or whatever, how are they going to measure it?
Yeah, it's going to be tough. I mean, it's blood testing, but it's going to be tough to have a definitive amount for marijuana because it's not just the how many nanograms you have, but the THC is different and it stays in your system different, and different parts of marijuana plants have different levels and indications of what could cause impairment. So it's not cut and dried. An alcohol molecule is an alcohol molecule, but a THC is not aren't always the same from different
I don't
plants.
like that at all, Miles. I don't like where it's going. I don't like the fact that if they assume that I'm under the influence of something, and I said, no, I'm not. And they give me a breathalyzer, and sure enough, I'm not blowing any alcohol whatsoever. Like, well, we're going to take you downtown and give you a blood test. And they take me downtown and give me a blood test. I didn't smoke at a party that night. I'm completely sober, but I smoked. I'll definitely tell you, I smoked the night before, and I slept on it, and I'm sober. I'm awake now, but obviously the marijuana is still in my system. Can they abuse that so they don't look like fools for pulling me over to begin with?
Yes, I mean that's the
Great.
problem.
Awesome.
It kind of shifts the burden to the defense to establish that whatever measurement they have didn't cause impairment. And then you still have the classical defense that you have objective symptoms that are inconsistent with being impaired, just like for alcohol. So, for example, to walk the line test. If somebody does a pretty good job on the walk the line test, being either an alcohol case or a drug case, or alcohol and drugs, and if they do a good job on the walk the line test, that's consistent with not being impaired. So, there's our defense is not just the science component, but also the subjective facts.
Got some calls coming in for you, Miles. Let's see. We got Dennis on line one. Hello, Dennis.
Hey, what's up, Frosty, Frank, Carrie, and Miles?
Hey.
So, Miles,
Hello, Dennis.
say I'm drinking in my car, keys are in the ignition. I'm on my second beer. Cop happened to I'm in my driveway, by the way. Cop happened to drive
Are you about
by.
ready to pull out, or you just pull in your driveway?
I just got off work and I'm listening to the show.
Oh,
and
good.
having a few beers.
Oh, good. You're not going in the house. It's a good show.
Yeah, it is.
Are you drunk right now?
Yeah, I'm drinking some 714. I'm on my second beer.
Carrie to our audience,
Getting
of
a
course,
little
they're
hot, so
drunk.
I might go inside.
All right, so he's working the night shift. He gets home early, and he's listening to the show in his driveway. Cop pulls by. And
Was there a question in there? Or
I think so.
Are you giving me the question?
No, I'm saying, because I seen two cops drive by already.
Okay.
Yes. So would I get in
You
trouble?
ra- you
or it
ra-
just
you raise
depends
your
on the
beer and
blood
toast
alcohol
them?
level?
Say it again.
Sorry?
I asked if you raised your beer to toast them.
No, I kind of hit it.
Yeah, that's pretty smart. Look, if you're behind the wheel, the ignition is running, and you're drinking while you're in the car, and obviously you're going to have alcohol in your system, you're subjected to being arrested. If they see you, even though you're on private property, they can come on.
it looks like intent to drive.
Yeah, I mean, there's many different reasons why a police officer could justify approaching while you're sitting in the car. One of them would be drinking while you're behind the wheel. That's pretty.
One of them could just be
Pretty
looking
solid.
shady in a driveway. Why are you drinking in your car?
Miles, I have a
He's
question.
listening to the show.
Because I wanted to
It's a
listen to
front-
the show, and then people are asleep inside.
You know what?
You know, you can take the keys out of the ignition, right? That would help.
You know,
My battery's going to die.
if for some reason, you know, they do approach you, you give a call to 888-4-TOP-GUN right away, because we're going to use a Frosty, Heidi, and Frank defense for the very first time. That he wasn't under the influence, he was listening to the show.
Amazing.
If you do take the keys out of the ignition because you want to sleep it off in your car in the parking lot and put them behind it, put them back in the tire or something, is that a good defense, or is that?
You know, those are heartbreaking stories, and I'll tell you why. The answer is no. Well, it depends.
Because you're doing the responsible
yes and
thing.
no. Another truthful answer. Maybe. The thing of it is that when somebody's drinking and driving, and oftentimes they realize that they shouldn't be drinking and driving, but they're in the car by themselves, there's nobody else to give the car to, so they pull over. Oftentimes, I mean, it's not too smart to pull over in the shoulder of the freeway and do it, but they get off the freeway and park on a side street, but then all of a sudden the car may look out of place, or police officer may see the person sleeping in the car and they approach it. Or they park behind a mall or somewhere where they're being responsible to the extent that they stop themselves from driving. And what's heartbreaking about it is that they still can be arrested and prosecuted for driving under the influence. So the fact that they didn't see him driving at the time, which is I think what you're getting to, and they didn't have the keys in the ignition, and so are they really driving? Is there evidence of driving? The answer is it depends, because here's what really happens. Banging on the window, roll down the window, wake up the guy, or they sometimes break the window to wake up the guy because they don't know, or gal, because they don't know whether or not the person is okay or under the influence. So once they begin the investigation, the guy, what are you doing here? Well, I'm sleeping it off. Oh, when did you drive here? About a half hour ago. So now the person just admitted that they drove the car to where they're at. Which brings us to another issue is that when you get pulled over for DUI, you're under no obligation to answer all their questions and tell them where you're coming from, where you're going to, how much you had to drink or smoke or eat, any of that stuff. All you have to do is identify yourself, give a registration, and driver's license, and proof of insurance. But people end up talking themselves into a DUI arrest.
That's one of the unfortunate side effects of drinking, as people like to talk a lot.
So you can actually get away with saying absolutely nothing. You can just present your ID, your license, your registration, all that stuff, and you can literally say nothing.
That's correct. You're under no obligation to cooperate with the police officer and give it incriminating evidence against yourself. You don't have to do that. So,
but what would you say? Give us the one line. If you had to write a line to say on a card that's going to...
I played the fifth.
Not be rude, not be like, okay, not lead to suspicion that you might be drinking because you're so defensive. What would you say to the cop?
Well, it's not just what you say, Frank, but it's also how you say it. So it's always a good idea to be polite and respectful of the police officer.
And try not to hiccup while saying.
Yeah, right. Or slur your speech.
Yeah.
But you can politely refuse to answer any of the questions. I appreciate what you're doing, but I just prefer not to answer your questions. Then they're going to, of course, ask you to get out of the car. They want to have you do field sobriety tests. And again, it's for alcohol as well as drugs, including marijuana.
My fear would be the police would say in court he was so drunk he couldn't speak.
Yes and no.
Because they can throw that out there. All of us agree he couldn't even talk. Well, I chose not to talk. How do you defend that?
Yeah, it's not so much what you think that the police are going to say or what the prosecutor would say. It's what the evidence is and the other interpretation of what the evidence is. And so if they don't have... when you drank last, or where you're coming from, or where you're going, if they don't have that information, that's less information that they have to prosecute. And quite frankly, if there's no interrogation, no information other than they identify who you are, and there's no field sobriety test, you would think that their evidence is somewhat weak, which it is. And then, of course, I haven't been asked yet, but I'm sure I will at some point in time, what happens regarding the breath test or the blood test. Oh, I'm getting,
Myles,
I'm shaking. I'm getting shaking
You
heads.
just ask
yes.
yourself. But we got some more calls coming in.
Sure.
And since, I mean, yeah, when we first started, working with you, Myles, I mean, 25 years ago, I mean, probably even over that, it was just drinking and driving. Now that's marijuana, whether it be medicinal or now that it's recreational, and even prescription drugs. They don't operate heavy machinery, and that doesn't give you a license to go ahead and take your medication because you're operating a vehicle. I mean, you pull out your, I have a certificate that says I have medical marijuana. That doesn't help
I
you.
swear you sound like you
that
just
your
had
voice changer?
helium.
Am
I the only one that
He's trying to mask his identity.
Yeah, I do the helium kush. But they should make that where you smoke and your voice changes. Oh, $1 idea.
Genius idea.
Helium kush.
Sell it in balloons.
Yeah.
We're gonna make millions.
A lot of people think that because they have a medical marijuana card, that'll help them get out of a prosecution, but it won't. What's amazing is that people get pulled over for DUI. Again, we're talking about marijuana in this scenario, and they actually have dope in their car, pot in their car, and the cops won't take it. They'll give it back to them. Where I know people, you would go to jail years ago.
Right.
Life has really changed.
Well, Victor said he got an open container ticket for weed, and he wanted to know what the rules are on that. Hello, Victor.
Hey.
All right,
Hi, guys.
explain your open container ticket for weed.
Okay, so I was leaving LAX from dropping off my friend, and on the way I got pulled over for expired tags. And then basically the cop, he says, "Hey, I smell marijuana. Did you guys smoke?" Well, I said, "No. I smoked this morning." Anyways, they asked if they could search the car. I said, "Yeah, sure." They asked me if I had any marijuana. I said, "Yeah, there's some right here in the center console." So they searched the vehicle, and then obviously they found that, and so I ended up getting an open container ticket. And so basically, my question is that really considered open container when it's away? There's no nothing to smoke it with or anything around it.
I'd have to think about that. This is a little bit unusual for me to hear open container for marijuana, so I'm not quite sure what the actual statute is that they cited you for. But you don't have any medical marijuana card or anything like that, correct?
I didn't at the moment because it was actually I didn't have it with me. I had it in my other wallet. I switched wallets that weekend. So.
Is this case still pending?
Excuse me?
Is the case still pending? Do you still have to go?
Yes, I actually.
Okay.
I have court next week or on the 8th.
All right, I'll be back in the office in a little while. You can call 888-4-TOP-GUN and we can talk about it.
Awesome. Thank you, Myles.
So Myles,
You're welcome.
Yeah, pulled aside because stupidly I got expired plates, brake lights don't work, whatever. They pull me aside. Now they smell booze in my breath. They're not pulling me over because I was weaving around, but now they know there might be booze. Breathalyzers whipped out. Do I take the test or not? And what happens if I don't?
Okay. What I'm going to say is what the law requires and doesn't require. You actually can refuse to take a breath or a blood. When we get our driver's license, we consent to take a breath or a blood, but then when you're in this investigation scenario, you have the right to refuse to take the test. Now, if you do refuse, they can get a warrant to get a forced blood draw. They can do that. They don't always do that. And also, sometimes when they don't get a warrant for a blood test, now then there will not be a breath or a blood result. So in court, obviously, there are easier cases to win when there's no interrogation information, there's no field sobriety test, and there's no breath or a blood test. The DMV will be harder on a refusal case than it would.
That's completely separate than court.
That is separate.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So those are what people's choices are, and that's as far as I could go to publicly say what people should do. Just that's what the law is.
When they ask you to do a field sobriety test, you refuse that, but they take you downtown and say blood or pee or whatever they take from you.
Yeah, I do want to add, if you're older than 21 and you're investigated by the police, and before you're arrested, they'll want you to blow into a portable breath test machine on the street, you don't have to do that. That you should refuse. That's completely voluntary if you're older than 21. But what you're saying, Frank, after you get arrested, they take you. They ask you to take a breath test, or if not, a blood test. Urine generally isn't available, except sometimes like in drug cases. But urine was so unreliable that they knocked that out as a test for alcohol.
Oh, okay. So if I get out of the car, say resist talking too much, should I also resist when I get out of the car to do the field sobriety test? Should I resist the urge to break into dance?
Well, it depends. Are you a good dancer? I mean, that can show you're sober.
Yeah.
That can show you walk the line.
If I can,
I want to do a dance.
If I can just shot the straight line, will that help me or hurt me?
Unless he's a drunken master and he can only dance when he's wasted.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's one thing that always bugs me. If let's say I've had 1 or 2 beers, I'm not inebriated. I've just had a couple beers at the pub, throwing darts at the guys. I live 2 miles away. I'll be home in 90 seconds. But everyone's, okay, chug a shot before you leave. Okay, 1 for the road. Now, that's in my system, but it's not. I'm not inebriated from that for another 10, 15 minutes.
It's in your mouth, not quite in your system.
Right. So now I get pulled over 6 blocks away, and they make me wait to take the blood test or whatever. 15 minutes later, when I take that test, and now I'm over the limit. But I wasn't when you pulled me over. So you never should do a shot for the road, right?
Yes and no.
I mean, don't finish your beer. Don't chug what you got.
Well, here's the problem, Frosty. You said you live 2 blocks away, but you got pulled over 6 blocks away. So where are you
going
headed?
to 7-Eleven to get on.
Officer Frank, back off.
You're correct, Frosty. That what your alcohol level is depends on the timing of the test and the timing of the drinking. But that's one of the defenses that we use in defending people for in court on DUI cases.
Because legitimately,
without getting too,
yeah, but legitimately,
right.
Your Honor, I did that shot. I was going to drive straight home so I could enjoy the buzz in my backyard and my pool.
It does take a while for alcohol to go through your system.
Do they buy that?
Miles,
Yeah.
can you visualize this
It
right
depends
now?
how big is your pool.
Frosty's naked in his pool, drunk.
On the stomach or on his back?
Well, the stomach is floating.
How do you visualize?
Real floaty.
There we go.
There it is.
And then what happens?
And those little pubes on top of your head.
Oh, Myles, it's so much fun having you here on the show. It's big Memorial Day weekend, so if you do happen to encounter a what do they call it again?
Checkpoint.
Those things.
Or roadblock or anything, you get into any kind of mishap at all, call Myles L. Berman at 1-888-4 Top Gun, all right? Or go to topgundui.com. And think about Myles, on his Twitter, he'll let you know every weekend where the checkpoint's going to be, because that's public knowledge. It's just free information, and he takes that knowledge and he puts it out on Twitter at Myles L. Berman on Twitter's Myles spelled M-Y-L-E-S, then the L, then Berman, B-E-R-M-A-N, and he puts out the checkpoints every single weekend. I usually retweet him, but if you want to follow him yourself so you don't miss it, be sure and do that.
Now,
And
Myles, is that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? Call that number, like from where you pulled over. Call it from
Yes.
from that point right there.
Yeah,
But in
people
front
are
of the
calling
cops.
us.
I'm calling you.
Sure.
Okay.
I don't know if they'll get through to me, but
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
leave
it's
a
not your
message.
cell
I'll
phone?
get
That's
back.
not your cell phone
I'm
number.
picturing you laying in bed with your beautiful wife and looking at the alarm clock and the phone's ringing. This is you answering
You're
every
never
drunk
asleep.
call that comes in. 888, the number 4, TOPGUN. Thank you, Myles, for coming in. We got to check traffic right now. What's going on, Lisa?
Traffic report is brought to you by Walgreens.